and there's problems Mark Zuckerberg is facing. He's been called on by a parliamentary committee to come and give evidence about the misuse, really, of personal data that they've been collecting and handing to a company called Cambridge Analytica. We've got Silkie Carlo with us now, Director of Big Brother Watch. Silkie, a very good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, should we not be fairly used to this kind of treatment? I mean, people harvest our data all the time, and we don't really know what they do with it.
That's true, and I think that what's really interesting about this scandal is that it's finally illustrated the potential effects when you have such mass data harvesting and what can be done with it. And to be fair, privacy advocates have been warning about this for years, that we risk not only intruding on people's personal lives and, you know, obviously tailored advertising, but actually reshaping democracies as well. And I think that's really demonstrated by the scandal.
Yeah, indeed. And as far as what Facebook can kind of do about it, I mean, are they being really seriously damaged by this, or is this going to just be a kind of a blip or a bump in the road, as you might say?
That will be really interesting to watch. They certainly seem to have been damaged by it so far because they've shed about £50 billion over the last $50 billion, over the past 2 days. And that's because what's being exposed is the very fabric of their business model. They are in the business of data exploitation. That's what Facebook is, and I think all of us really need to wake up and be aware that if we're using Facebook, we are the product, and our information will be used, passed around and exploited. That's how Facebook works.
Yeah, and Facebook is now being described by some people in the United States as an organisation that should be treated less like a company and more like an actual country. I mean, are we going to have to find ourselves kind of legislating against certain acts that social media companies get involved in?
I would describe Facebook as a global intelligence database that we voluntarily sign up to. You know, that's what it is. And it's interesting when you look at the kind of different ways that people's information has been used and is used in ways to effectively influence and manipulate people and their views. You know, we've seen Facebook has itself experimented, for example, with mood manipulation several years ago. Tailoring people's news feeds to make them feel happy or sad. And the group that owns Cambridge Analytica is actually a military contractor that's been involved in propagandizing, state influencing, and so on. So yeah, the power is extraordinary. Yeah. Whether this can be dealt with through legislation, I'm not sure, but I think people really need to take things into their own hands and reconsider whether they want to give their information to this platform. How easy is that to do, though? Because the genie, to some extent, Silk, is out of the bottle, isn't it? I mean, once you've signed up to Facebook, I mean, we spoke to some people yesterday about this, and, you know, because there are those who are saying, well, maybe we should just get off Facebook. It's a bit late now, isn't it? Well, it's never too late. I mean, yes, extracting yourself from Facebook, it can be a little bit difficult. Facebook has really incredible tracking potential, whether you're a member of Facebook or not. You know, it can also have ghost profiles of people who aren't even members of Facebook. But I would say, you know, you have an option. Either you tell Facebook what you think and how you feel every day and put photos of you, your family, your children on there, or you don't, you know, and I think that's damage limitation, and that's certainly something I'd recommend. Yeah, absolutely right. And when you see these kinds of stories, and companies like Cambridge Analytica that I'd never heard of until, you know, they popped up this week, I mean, you wonder how many other companies like Cambridge Analytica are doing the same thing. That's absolutely right, Mike. I mean, this is a drop in the ocean. Cambridge Analytica is not the root of all evil as far as data exploitation goes. I mean, what they've done is frankly despotic, and their offers of, you know, bribing and honey trapping and so on are really, really terrible. But let's look at the bigger picture. As I said, the group that actually owns Cambridge Analytica, the SCL group, works with governments on influencing and manipulating. And Facebook itself, you know, is the real issue. Who knows what Facebook can do with the 2 billion profiles that it has? Cambridge Analytica allegedly had 50 million profiles, which is just 2% of the overall data that Facebook has. So what are we going to do when Facebook decides to target people in pursuit of its own political or commercial interests? Yeah. Or if it targets people under government pressures, which we see it increasingly come under, particularly with government pressurising around fake news, trying to censor unpopular views, so-called extremism, and so on. And if and when Facebook does that kind of manipulation, how would any of us ever know about it? There's a much bigger picture here.
There really is. But I suppose before social media, we had leafleting, we had political parties buying and selling mailing lists and getting access to people's information as best they could in those days. Is this really any worse than that?
That's true, and if we look, for example, the way that Cambridge Analytica has been brought into there has been attempts to bring Cambridge Analytica under the spotlight in relation to Brexit, and of course, as far as I know, the Leave campaigns spent half as much on digital advertising as the UK government spent on leaflets. And it's really hard. I think we'll never know what had a greater effect, and we'll never be able to blame the outcome of an election on digital advertising or leafleting or whatever. But the risks with digital advertising and manipulating on the basis of personal private information online is that the potential is so much more. It's actually unimaginable. So there is the ability now to predict people's behaviours, gain insight into their behaviours, calculate people's mental health, sexuality, and really gain insights into people's lives just based on a few likes and posts online.
So would you say, finally, in conclusion, Silkie, if you have got a Facebook account, you should just get out of it?
It's up to everyone. It's an individual choice, and I think it's important just to make an informed choice. I'm not on Facebook. I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, I would never, I think it's questionable to volunteer your information to a global intelligence database that's in the business of manipulating individuals and actually potentially democracies at large, as we've seen. And you just need to make an informed choice about that. But I would certainly recommend, if people are going to stay on Facebook, have a look at your privacy settings and have a think about limiting the type of information that you give to the platform.